It's not. All right, welcome back, everybody. You tuned into Morning Live here on SABC2. It's such a pleasure having you with us. And of course, our guest of honor this morning is the Finance Minister Gordhan, making him wake up extra early this morning to come and talk to us about the budget which he unveiled yesterday. Of course, that was just the unveiling. The working that goes into it, I imagine, begins in earnest straight after he delivers the one budget. He's already working on next year's budget, and I'm sure that's a fact, Minister. You already started. Yeah, I'm sure. That's just the way it goes. The worry, however, and you know, there was something that made me worry a little bit about our conversation going into the ad break before, because I heard it echoed by a couple of the opposition parties, the IFP being one of them, and basically what they are saying is that what is evident is that the National Treasury and the Presidency are talking past each other. Is there a political will to want to support the Treasury and what you come up with?
Remember that the Treasury, as I said earlier on, doesn't operate in its own right. It's part of the government system, firstly. Secondly, we've spent a lot of time in the last few days trying to inform the public that the budget process, is a long process, like you said. It starts in about May each year. There's any number of consultations with departments and the Presidency as we go from May to about September. We take many of the proposals to Cabinet. We take them to the President and Deputy President to look at as well. So by the time we get to the medium-term budget policy statement or the budget like yesterday, there's a fair amount of consultation. There's guidance that is offered. This is acceptable, that's not acceptable, whatever the case might be. Or these are priorities, these are not priorities, as would happen in any relationship between a CEO and a CFO. And what we delivered yesterday was government's budget, not Treasury's budget. And it is government that will now start implementing and using that money at the end of the day. So we have the alignment that's necessary to get work done effectively at this point in time.
Yeah. You know, we also bring up, and one thing as I mentioned when we started speaking, was that you used the word transformation about 50 times during this particular budget.
Did you actually count?
I was counting.
Okay.
I had a list and I was taking them off. But I never heard you say radical transformation, and that was something that the President was addressing. Now, there are a lot of ministries that are exceptionally critical of you, and you know that, and they say that you and the Treasury are standing in the way of this radical economic transformation. I can highlight just two ministers, Water and Sanitation Minister Nomvula Mokonyane and Small Development Minister Lindiwe Zulu, who feel that you are not allowing this radical transformation to take place. What's your response to that?
Firstly, it's incorrect. We did use the word radical yesterday. In fact, I also explained what radical is. The radical is when you get down to the fundamentals of a problem, get to the root of a problem, and then you deal with that at a root level, so to speak, rather than superficially. So that's the first thing. The second thing I said is that distinguish between slogans and content. The slogan is fine. What's the content of radical economic transformation? And the speech is full of it. It is actually saying that the biggest issue in South Africa, as I pointed out earlier on, is the levels of inequality, poverty, and marginalization. The third thing is, and I don't want to refer to my two colleagues, I'll have a conversation with them off the media stage, because that's the way we should be behaving in respect of colleagues. If you want to have a discussion, do it privately and either come to a point of agreement or disagreement and then carry on with life. But the deeper question we need to ask is, what is this slogan and narrative about? Is it about genuinely empowering ordinary South Africans, all 50-odd million of them, and making sure that over a 5 or 10-year period they have assets in their hands, they can point to wealth, they can show a change in their prosperity, that per capita GDP is increasing for all of them, and the numbers and the sentiment demonstrate that people are happier, they have a better sense of well-being about themselves? Or is this about covering up for patronage, for cronyism, for a select few benefiting from this process? Because we better learn from the rest of the world. As I pointed out earlier on, when the few benefit and the majority gets left behind, you have the kind of problems that you have in many parts of the world. We've had the few benefiting historically in South Africa. You don't want to repeat that mistake with a different color face now. And so let's get into the content of these matters. And one doesn't know whether some of these slogans are taking us back to last year. Capturing the treasury, controlling the funds, getting access to the public purse, and all of those sorts of things as well. Now, if that's the case, then, why don't we talk about it?
Yeah.
And say, what is the treasury doing that's so evil, that's so unacceptable, except implementing the Constitution and the laws of the country and making sure that all of us behave by the rules that we've all developed as part of our democracy.
Yeah. I do know that there was a press briefing just before, in fact 90 minutes of your time before you went into the budget to deliver it with the press, and you spoke very openly about this threat to you, about the threat to your deputy and to the Treasury. And I think what was quoted and what most of the media are really taking out of it was that one line where basically you say that there are some institutions that you shouldn't mess with, and the Treasury is one of them. Do you feel that people are banging on your door trying to convince you of what you don't believe in?
I think you should have them here and ask them here, what are they about, you see, so they can answer for themselves. And more importantly, account to South Africans in an open and transparent way. That's what we do on behalf of government. We're here on the public platform. You can ask us any question you like. We'll have to answer them. So, yeah, I think the Deputy Minister and I will survive, We've been around. We've both been activists of the ANC for many, many years. And our value systems are pretty much intact. And we'll try to do the best we can as public servants, that we have been for decades now. So what are they trying to do? I go back to the question, why is the Treasury suddenly so important? Why is delivery of water or basic education or health services or infrastructure not just as important? Because all we do is allocate money as the government instructs us to and implement the law. If you're talking about actual service delivery in South Africa, there's a whole lot of other departments who impact on an everyday basis on people's lives. Shouldn't that be the concern? Because that's what you're saying you're getting feedback about. What are we getting for the tax we're paying? So let's focus on delivery of excellence to South African citizens so that they can really feel in a palpable way the difference in their lives as a result of government working better on the one hand and their taxes being used in an appropriate way on the other hand. And those who have ulterior motives to actually pocket public funds for their own use must be exposed.
Right.
And the problem is that they somehow have the ability to buy off people for one reason or another.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe you can explain it. And in a sense, have this very well-organized, orchestrated campaign. Why have fake Twitter accounts, fake Facebook pages? I don't know about all these things. Have a whole channel dedicated to attacking the Treasury every day. What for?
Yeah.
What are we standing in the way of that these resources are being put into? What is there to hide at the end of the day? That these people are grappling with all sorts of levers of government in order to keep some people quiet. So those are questions I think that your viewers and South Africans more generally must ask with a greater deal of urgency and earnestness, and get some answers from these people.
Indeed. All right. Well, I think you've been frank and open about it from your perspective, and we do appreciate that honesty. But let's get back to the budget for now.
This was about the budget too.
It is about the budget. We'll keep politics and the budget. You can never, ever separate the two of them. But we've got so many people here on the floor. And I actually want to start off firstly with, we've got some radio stations that are present, some community radio stations who yesterday, of course, were asking their listeners to send in some questions. So I think with the two radio stations that are here, Radio Zibonele and Radio Voice of the Cape. Where are you? I'm not sure where you're situated. There you are. All right. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Minister and guests. I'm representing the Voice of the Cape radio station. This question by our listener this morning, government is putting more strain on the taxpayers by increasing taxes and the cost of basics. Why not review the exorbitant salaries of the ministers and the president and also spend less on lavish functions? And then the other question relates to the railway system. This listener says, while the ministers touched on service delivery, the rail system is in a mess. How much is being contributed to speedily upgrade the dysfunctional system as it contributes to productivity? Thank you.
Right. Let's get the other questions as well from the other radio station.
Morning, Minister. Morning, everyone. My name is Buyani. I'm from Zibolele FM. One question. What is the possibility of allocation for NSFAS and possibility of a free education? That's one question. Second question is, what is the budget allocation for the security sector? More police to be employed and more jobs. So more job creation.
All right.
Sure.
I know, a lot to remember.
Right, the Deputy Minister will now earn his breakfast.
Can we get a microphone to the Deputy Minister and we can do that?
What was the first question?
Well, the one question, let's begin. We'll sort of go through, but one of them was about education, the allocation to education and the possibility of free education.
While the mic reaches the Deputy Minister, on the education front, we were quite explicit yesterday to say that over the next 3 years, well, firstly, at the beginning of last year and for the February budget last year, what we overnight had to find over, 10 billion rands. And in total, over the next 3 years, some 33 billion rands has been set aside. An additional 5 billion rands has been set aside in this budget for higher education. So that's the money. Secondly, we know that that doesn't meet all of the requirements immediately. But given the constrained environment we live in, that's one of the challenges. Thirdly, we're also saying that we need to develop, together with the students and civil society organizations that are involved, and to be led by Minister Nzimande in this process, a very clear roadmap. What are we going to be able to do over the next 5 years, 10 years, and incrementally get to a point where those who are in desperate need of assistance, financially speaking, are actually able to get the kind of assistance that they require. There's still a bit of a debate about whether those parents who are able to pay for their children's education should also be given the opportunity for free education. And that debate must continue. And the last point is that there are a number of civil society interventions at the moment, different fora, different conventions that people have in mind. And the whole idea is to get all of the role players in the room, share whatever aspirations and challenges that we have, and find some consensus on this roadmap so that all of us are in agreement about what is possible and what isn't possible. Remember that when growth is at the levels we're finding it, 0.5, 1% or 1.3%, revenue is constrained as well. And there are all sorts of other demands that government has to cater for, whether it's housing, water, municipal services, and there's a long list as far as that is concerned. So what's the trade-off? Who is going to give up what amount of money so that more money can be allocated to a particular area? This is a closed system. You can't keep putting money in, and the way to put money in is related to the other question, tax increases. Yeah. But there are limits to tax increases as well. So nobody likes tax increases, but in a constrained environment that we find ourselves in, we have been extremely transparent, by the way, both in the February budget last year and in the medium-term budget policy statement in October, about how much of expenditure is going to be cut and what taxes need to be raised. So if you just go back to that period and reports of that period, you'll find that we say in February we have to have 28 billion rands in tax increases. That number has been around for quite a while. The only question is what's the combination of taxes that will contribute to the 28 billion. Equally, we've said we've got to cut, eventually it was 20 billion rands over the last year on the expenditure side as well. But the key question is, if we don't collaborate to create conditions for the economy to grow, for the tax base to be wider, more people to actually contribute, we will have this situation where the demands are quite challenging on the one hand, but on the other hand, fiscal capability isn't there to actually match that demand.
All right.
Deputy Minister?
Before the Deputy Minister speaks, I'm going to give you a chance to have a glass of water and think more about your answers and get the questions to you as well, Deputy Minister. We need to pay the bills, so we've got to take a break. We'll come back and then we'll get the responses from the Deputy Minister here.
Too many
Stay
bills
tuned.
to pay.
I know, these bills, too much.